Welcome to 247 Real Talk. I'm your host, Julian Perry, and it's a pleasure to be here with you for another episode of the 247 Real Talk podcast. As I always do, I'm checking in with you to see how your week was since the last time we spoke, which was last Wednesday, July 3rd, right before the July 4th celebration. I hope you all had a wonderful celebration of July 4th. I hope you if it's rest you needed, you rested. If it was time with the family, you did that. If it was the barbecue, the beach, whatever, I'm hoping that you did what you needed to do. I'm hoping that you enjoyed it and enjoyed the celebration safely. And it is my pleasure to have you here for another week. I want to thank all my continued supporters, subscribers, and I want to welcome all the new subscribers to the channel as the channel continues to grow, as we continue to have constructive conversations about life, about our society, about our social issues, and about our future. Over the past few days, I got a lot of messages from different people, very concerned about something that I have to admit I didn't know anything about. And I do a lot of research, but you can't know everything, right? So I'm going to go over a document I printed with some excerpts from different places. I'm going to talk about something that, if in fact it's true, it should be very concerning to everyone. It's called Project 2025. So sit back, relax, and I'll be right back. So welcome back to the channel. Let me fix my mic. Oops. Sorry about that. I'm trying out different mics, as I tell you every week, and sometimes it takes a little getting used to and getting it set up the right way to work. Forgive me for those of you who are seeing me messing with my mic here on the channel. Looks like we have a clear signal, so we shall proceed. I hope you can hear me clearly. And so it's a pleasure to be here with you once again for this episode. As I said, I'm going to talk a bit about Project 2025. And like I said, I didn't know anything about this. It was some family members and some friends who brought this to my attention. And so some of these things I'm going to read are quotes from other sources. I didn't list all the sources, so bear with me and forgive me. It's not an attempt to plagiarize or copyright. It's simply an attempt to gather information at a rapid pace and to bring you at least a preliminary understanding and conversation so we can continue this as we go forward. So Project 2025 is a 920-page document from conservatives in America, where conservatives are the Republican Party, right? It outlines what the next presidency should look like should there be a conservative president, which means should there be a Republican president. And it just doesn't include policy proposals like immigration, education proposals, and economic plans. But they're saying it's a portrait of the America that conservatives hope to implement in the next Republican administration, whomever the president is. They're saying that this Project 2025 will create a playbook of actions that must be taken in the first 180 days of the new administration. Project 2025 is, I have to say allegedly, since I couldn't confirm this, the brainchild of the Heritage Foundation, the 50-year-old conservative think tank that's among the most influential right-wing organizations in this country. So there are four main points, I believe it is, categories that everything falls under. supposed to be 4. Maybe I got them wrong, but um, there's restoring the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children, defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats, secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, what the Constitution calls the blessings of liberty, and dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. Now, in context, right, that doesn't sound so bad, those labels, right? But we're going to delve into them just a little bit. This cannot be a long episode because, quite frankly, I don't know enough about the subject yet. But everyone's raising alarms around me, and I felt that it was necessary to raise the alarm to my subscribers. Let me rephrase that. To start the conversation with my audience, with the subscribers, allow you to spread, allow you to have conversations with others so that we can continue to having meaningful and intelligent conversations and making decisions around what this really means and how you feel about it. So let's start with restoring the family as a centerpiece of American life and protect our children. And from that document, it says the next conservative president must make institutions of American civil society hard targets for woke culture warriors. So those who are against the woke culture, we must make these institutions a hard target. They want to delete the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, and any other term used to deprive Americans of their First Amendment rights out of every federal rule, agency, regulation, contract, grant, regulation, blah, blah, blah. So they want to remove those terms that they feel, conservatives feel, that for some reason takes away rights of Americans and harms children. Now, I know that this country went through a struggle as they embraced the LGBTQI community, as they embraced gender equality, gender awareness, diversity. These are all things that are fundamentally, powerful attributes to American democracy. When you want to eliminate terms like diversity in a country that had civil rights wars, in a country that once had segregation, slavery, in a country that celebrates its independence as a country and celebrates all the civil rights movements that have taken us this far so that women have equal rights and people of color have equal rights. And all these laws and regulations and rules were written to be inclusive of our differences. And the only way that we can be accepting of all is to be inclusive of all our differences. We are all different people. It doesn't matter what one individual thinks. It just matters that if we call ourselves a democracy and we call ourselves the greatest country in the world, the greatest nation in the world, then we need to embrace everyone who's the same and everyone who's different. When you want to remove things like gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, diversity, sexual orientation, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, think about what your lives would be like. Will we truly be moving towards a democracy? Or will we actually end up being casualties of changes that erase all the progress we have made for hundreds of years and take us back to the struggles that we've worked so hard and so many lives have been lost to overcome? We have the whole abortion issue. And it says here, the next conservative president should work with Congress to enact the most robust protections for the unborn that Congress will support while deploying existing federal powers to protect innocent life and vigorously complying with statutory bans on the federal funding of abortion. Conservatives should ardently pursue these pro-life and pro-family policies while recognizing many women who find themselves in immensely difficult and often tragic situations and the heroism of every choice to become a mother. Alternative options to abortion, especially adoption, should receive federal and state support. Now, we have seen what the reverse of Roe versus Wade has done to this country. We have been, at least I have been heartbroken to hear the stories of many women who have decided to come forward and talk about incestual rape, talk about pregnancies resulting from unwanted sex, rape. And what you're telling them, what they chose to do was not go through childbirth because their dream, right? I don't think there's any woman, I don't care whether you're conservative, because I've heard from women who believe are totally anti-abortion. What is, as I think about it now, all of the women that I've heard from, who I've actually spoken with, who are totally against abortion, either have no children or are beyond the so-called natural or expected age to have children. These are people, when I really think about it, who would not be impacted by the law one way or the other because they are no longer in the position to birth children. We've heard stories from women who've embraced Roe versus Wade, who are fighting against what the Supreme Court did because they were the victims of rape. Women who wanted to have their dreams of kids come through in the right way. Possibly women who were married and who were raped and know that, or feel in their core that having a child where the husband, everyone knows, is not theirs, could tear the rest of the family apart. And I mean, even if you talk about adoption, adoption is a process. The woman has still got to birth that child. The psychological damage it can have on the entire family. And look, I understand the struggle here for many people. It is a difficult situation. As a person who's spiritual myself, it is something I would struggle with if I felt that I had the right to even deal with it. Meaning, this should be a woman's right to choose. If you are like me, you believe in the Almighty God, you believe in your Creator. You also believe that the day will come when you will stand before Him and be judged for the life that you lived here. And you also understand that it is not ours to judge others while we're here. If someone who is spiritual goes through a traumatic experience and has a child or has been impregnated involuntarily, and they believe in the core of their being that the correct decision is to get rid of that child, to abort that pregnancy, and they believe that when they're ready to face the Almighty God, whatever the consequence, because they believe in their spirit and their being as the one who the life, the unborn child, the spirit is within that woman, then their decision should be respected. We don't have the right as human beings to make these kinds of determinations on someone else's life. At least that's my belief. Because what you're doing there is not preserving liberty. What you're doing is taking away the right to choose. We understand it's a complex issue. We understand people feel strongly that if someone gets pregnant, it's automatically a life and we don't have the right to take it. But isn't this a hypocrisy when those same people, the same conservatives, the same Republican Party has other policies and other things in our society that hurt people? Isn't it the same as a party that looks to segregate rather than unite. A lot of the policies that I see, and I read this as an independent thinker, not biased Republican or Democrat. I'm reading this, and you hear me saying Republican a lot because that's what this is about. But there are so many policies in this country that restricts people. How many people have been incarcerated for decades because they were wrongfully convicted? Not because there was some overwhelming evidence that just happens to be circumstantial and it was an honest mistake or honest reading of how the evidence was presented. How many people we have incarcerated simply because of the color of their skin, because of the wealth divide and the socioeconomic divide in this country, where someone of wealthy means can afford a lawyer who can play the system, who knows the judges, who knows the lawyers, who knows the prosecutors, who has the money and the ability to go back to court 101,000 times if they need be and work out a plea or whatever and eventually get their client to walk. Whereas a person who started out at a disadvantage, a person of color, whether they're descendants from slavery, so they started behind. You have to, whether or not you like that, that's the truth. Can't afford an attorney because they don't have the monetary means, or and that may come from many things, right? They may be educated, they may have gone to college, they may have the highest in degrees, but they still can't get the best pay because they're female, because they're LGBTQI, or because they're a person of color. Either way, they're facing what at least President Biden has acknowledged as systemic racism. So they end up with a lesser paid lawyer, or in some cases, because all of their money is tied up in simple survival, they end up with a public defender who does not have the education, the level, the experience, the abilities, the access, all the things that a rich person has. And they go to jail because even the jury selection was biased. And then we have these freedom projects that look into these cases and go back, now that we've gone ahead how many years, and lo and behold, the judges are throwing these cases out and saying this person did not commit this crime. They're wrongfully incarcerated and lost 20, 30, 40 years of their lives. So when you're going to make decisions about women's right to choose, maybe the decision maker should be, first of all, a woman, these criteria. Second of all, a parent. Third of all, a woman of childbearing age, maybe. And I'm just suggesting these things because I was stunned to hear women who, I can understand some women who believe, well, abortion is wrong. I get what your ideology is. But when you have zero room to hear what anyone else has to say, as a woman, from a perspective of a man, I found that stunning. I also believe that there are men who are making all these decisions for women, and that should not be the case. Anyway, I spent way too much time, and that's just point number one. So let's move on. The next one is dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. A conservative president must move swiftly to do away with the vast abuses of presidential power and remove career and political bureaucrats who fuel it. Now, remove career and political bureaucrats who fuel it. This is totally subjective to political ideology. Right? Basically, what you're saying is you're going to remove these people from their positions in the agencies, and you're going to replace them with people of your choice who share your ideology. How is that a democracy? You want to take and chop off the entire head of the American government and replace it with everybody who believes what you believe, leaving no room for anyone who disagrees. The greatest thing about America is the ability for free speech and the ability to debate and be heard. If you cannot make any influence, I mean, look at what's going on in the Supreme Court right now. I've talked in episodes about the fact that the judiciary and legislation, those branches should be so separate that decisions made by the judiciary need to be completely based on law, and completely impartial, void of all influence from political ideology. But that's not what's happening in America today. The way we appoint judges, and because it's a political appointment, we inherently there is the what do I want to say, the poison of the political ideology being injected into the judiciary, and the result is what we have. So they're saying push Congress to return to its constitutional responsibility, restore power over Washington to the American people. Well, how are you restoring power to the American people if you're going to remove everyone who doesn't agree with what you believe in and put everyone in who only believes what you believe in? The American president should go beyond merely defending American energy interests, but go on the offense, asserting them to the world. America's vast reserves of oil and natural gas are not an environmental problem. Wow. Let me say that to you again. America's vast resources of oil and natural gas are not an environmental problem. That is a true and typical statement of someone whose wealth, who has benefited with their yachts and their planes and their multi-million-dollar houses from the sale of oil. Enough studies have been done around the world, and there's enough other countries, enough nations who have united and shown what we're doing to the ozone, what we're doing to our environment. The whole push for e-energy, electric cars, electric this, electric that, is because we find that all the processes needed to extract oil and process oil are putting toxins and things into our environment that are killing us. They're responsible for many of the cancers that we face. These have been done and proven via environmental tests. The one thing that they can't overcome is the fact that there's so many of the 1%, the top people, who flaunt their wealth to the rest of the Americans who have made money from oil, that taking the country, taking the nation in a direction that makes oil extinct or non-productive and not profitable would hurt their lifestyle, and the money that they have in that generations to come in their bloodline will be the recipients of without lifting a finger. Meanwhile, the rest of us struggle. We struggle with our socioeconomic challenges. We struggle with health challenges. We struggle because we live in the neighborhoods where the pollution is high, and the money is not put into those neighborhoods to do any cleaning up that makes our lives and the air we breathe any better. We struggle because we still fight to live, to get any part of the American dream. And now you're telling us that you want to restore the dominance of oil and gas over all the progress we've made of clean air, clean energy. We saw what 9/11 did, especially here in New York. This week alone, I think, or maybe in the last 2 weeks, I heard of at least 2 firefighters who only in the past few weeks succumbed to illnesses, cancers they got from breathing in the air of ground zero. I say that for you to understand that how many years later, people are still suffering the effects of poisonous air, of environmental impact. How many of our lives have to be shortened? How many of us want to live to see our children and our grandchildren and not sit up in a hospital room, or not be here at all, or be walking around with an oxygen mask, or be taking chemo, all because people who make a lot of money, who get to live at places in this country that we can't afford, who get to create neighborhoods that represent a wealth gap that you can't get into. And they have everything there from clean water to clean air. And you better believe it, when it comes to fracking, when it comes to all the things, pipelines, not in their backyard. Defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. The next president should promote pro-growth economic policies that spur new jobs and investment, higher wages and productivity. Yes, that agenda should include overdue tax and regulatory reform, but it should go further and include antitrust enforcement against corporate monopolies. It should promote educational opportunities. Listen to this. It should promote educational opportunities outside of the woke-dominated system of public schools. So a lot of these people, we heard it from Florida, I think it was Governor DeSantis and all these people, have a problem with woke. And I'm not sure if they understand what woke means to many people who have adopted that position, that process, that thought process. Enlightenment, as we call it. Woke to us means them facing the truth. And when you want to remove things like history from school, from education, from the curriculum, and somewhere else I read that part of what they want to do is dismantle the Department of Education completely. Why? Because if you go to schools still now, for most places, especially here in New York and across the United States, you will learn in schools and you will read books about slavery, about the abomination that was done to people of color, about the deaths and the mass killings and the struggles, about the fights and the treatment of one human being against another because of the differences in the color of their skin. That is what makes you appreciate where you are today in America as a person of color. What they want to do is erase that teaching from schools so the next generations wouldn't even know that people of color went through anything. They will grow up with the belief that we were just born the same as they are, and whatever opportunities they have in their wealth, we have it. And if we don't have it, then it's our fault because we never the past didn't happen. You know, this reminds me of when we read through the Bibles of the attempts over years, past times, to get rid of the Bible because of what it teaches, the good it teaches, the history it teaches. What have human beings recognized as yet? That no matter what power they think they haven't been able to get rid of the Bible. No matter what they threaten, no matter how many children they promise to kill, if you know the Bible, they haven't been able to get rid of it. Because you cannot erase history. You cannot erase history. And trying to create a program where children will no longer be taught how far this country has actually come as a democracy. Children will not be taught about the struggles of people of color and others. There are Caucasian people who were independent enough to join the fight of colored people, of people of color. You want to erase all that history, all the struggles, all the sacrifices, because you don't want your kids to know the horrible human beings you are and the horrible human beings your ancestors were. Those of you who profited and enjoyed the high life while you subjected people of color, to death and destruction and poverty and oppression and hate and violence, while you incarcerated people of color because of the color of their skin. You don't want anyone to know that. You want everyone to grow up in a field of daisies and sunflowers, skipping along like none of it ever happened. So you want to oppress woke because it flies in the face and it makes you look in the mirror and be disgusted at looking at yourself. I have many people I know who are not people of color, who are white people, who have stood beside me and have had conversations with me and have been a part of projects to make sure that people are woke, to make sure that history is never, it can't be erased, but it's never hidden. It's ever put in a box and tied up and buried away somewhere. So obviously, this is not just people of color alone. This is people of conscience, people of heart, and those who truly are people of God. They recognize that it is important that we accept all people, all genders, gender equality, gender equity, diversity. Those are all things, history, that are part of the quilt that makes us human beings. Really going long here, so I want to cut it off. But basically, like I said, the Department of Education, they want to get rid of federal agencies that especially things like the Department of Justice and those things that have oversight and that allow that work to stop the criminal activities of those who are wealthy, who seek to gain more wealth by any means necessary. They want to rewrite tax laws, and we see every time there's tax reform in the conservative mind, it's pro-wealthy. What I'm saying is, this is the United States of America. And whomever you vote for, here I am again taking my independent position. And I'm taking this position because what you heard me say is very one-sided in a way, and it has to be because it's all a derivative of Project 2025. It's not my creation. I am not the Heritage Foundation, whatever, that created this. I'm simply relaying to you the ideology that has been laid out in a 920-page document. Ultimately, the left does not believe that all men are created equal. They think they are special. They certainly don't think, and I'm reading a quote here. So again, I'm sorry I can't cite the source. I'm going to look at the site here for a moment. Maybe I can quickly find the source. I think it's called democracydocket.com. Democracydocket.com. That's where this quote comes from. Ultimately, the left does not believe that all men are created equal. They think they are special. They certainly don't think all people have an unalienable right to pursue the good life. They think only they themselves have such a right, along with a moral responsibility to make decisions for everyone else. They don't think any citizen, state, business, church, or charity should be allowed any freedom until they first bend the knees. When I heard about Project 2025, I was stunned. I was disturbed. I can't think of all the adjectives I would describe myself now, but the bottom line is, I was angry too. What do we say in America? Liberty, happiness, justice for all. Freedom of speech. We have a constitution that guarantees that. We have people who history has probably told us already were going to rear their heads. And that power was going to corrupt, and absolute power was going to corrupt absolutely. I said to someone some time ago, maybe last year, that it feels like we're going full circle. That we started at the bottom. We fought our way 180 degrees, and that's as far as we're going to get. Because forces are going to fight to take us back to the bottom. We cannot be the United States of America. Starts with you, United States of America. If the positions, the ideologies of all are not embraced, if we don't find a way to honor each other and everyone, irrespective of race, creed, color, gender, sexual orientation. We must embrace diversity. Embracing diversity means we're accepting of all. If we have a nation that's not accepting of all, then we're in trouble. And I'm going to look into this camera and I'm going to say this. When we talk about, and again, Project 2025, as it is written by a conservative movement or conservative organization, I want a lot of the conservatives who are not wealthy, and believe me, there are millions and millions of Republicans in America who are low class, who are middle class. They're in all classes. While the top 1% is probably dominated by conservatives because the ideology fits them monetarily, their wealth. A lot of the people who run behind an ideology don't benefit from it. There are more, as I look around, I think, my opinion, there are more conservatives who benefit from liberal policies than conservative policies. If you don't think this through as a human being, if you don't think through what your family, what the next generations deserve, if you don't make a decision based on the preservation of freedoms and life and righteousness and the ability to live a peaceful life, not only as who you are, but as whose you are, then you, along with all the liberals that you stub your nose at, you will suffer as well. If you think for a moment that the top 1% of conservatives care about the rest of the people of Republican ideology, no. They care about your vote, but not about your lives. Again, you have heard me on this podcast tell you that I like things, some things from the liberal, some things from the Republicans, because they do have things written in there that I agree with. And that makes me down the middle, very independent. I know many people will hear this podcast and immediately they will lose track of what I'm saying and think that I'm coming from a place of a political ideology. Again, and I want to repeat that because I want you to absorb what I'm saying as a human being. I want you to look at your entire circle of friends and family, especially Generation Z, where there's an intermingling of cultures and race. And look at the person next to you that you might be in love with, who is you're a person of color and they're not. And decide whether your love believes that they should have the same rights as you and should have the same opportunity to live their lives as you, accepted like you. This position of this episode is from this summary of Project 2025. You can go to democracydocket.com. You can Google it. And you can come up with your own conclusions. What I don't want you to do is ignore it. You can Google it, you can read it. You don't have to read all 920 pages because there's summaries in all the different sites I went to where you can get the entire gist of what it is like, exactly what I've told you on this episode. And you can decide you agree, disagree, believe, disbelieve. But one thing I'm going to ask you to do and plead with you to do is go at least and look at least at the summary of it. Educate yourselves on it. Look at what the fundamentals are and determine whether they fit your lives, the lives of your children, the lives of your friends, your family, your parents, anyone. Remember, we don't get to choose who our children are or how they grow up. They choose their own personalities. And the personality or the gender or whatever you try to suppress today, maybe your family member tomorrow. Where we stand often depends on where we sit. I urge you to sit in the middle so you can make righteous decisions about the direction of this country and who leads us forward for generations to come. I'd love to continue this conversation. I know I will, because we're leading up to an election. I urge you to subscribe, to share, to comment. Most important, share and subscribe. Let's grow this base. Let's grow this conversation. You can email me at podcast@247realtalk.net. Let's be cordial. Let's be polite to each other. I will not encourage or accept anyone who does anything other than. This is about respect for each other and doing the best we can for the United States of America, so that we have a government, whomever they are, that never forget that they are elected by the people for the people, to make sure that the majority of us in the United States of America benefit from this great nation of ours. As always, it's a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to have another opportunity to speak with you. Again, thank you to my supporters, existing and new. As I continue to look at the numbers, I hope you continue to spread the word and grow the channel so we can have a bigger, larger, more effective conversation and hopefully make a difference for generations to come. I thank you so much for the opportunity to be a part of your lives and to be a part of your listening and a part of your thoughts. Do have a wonderful week ahead. Do enjoy. In New York, it's hot. Wherever you are, enjoy the summer. And always remember, please take care of yourselves and each other.